Welcome back to Storytime with Daniel. We'll be continuing the chapter we began in the previous episode to the end. It's not the end of the book, just the end of the chapter. There are about 2 chapters to go, I think. We're getting very close. This is certainly... well, you'll see. Jake left for his business meeting at 10:30, and Kendall didn't see him for the rest of the day. She was relieved, because now she realised that she loved him. The less she saw of him, the better. And I quote, "She's so afraid that she'd do something that would give her true feelings away, and there was no way she wanted to suffer the cringing embarrassment of Jake discovering that she'd fallen for him." Well done, Kay Harborn. When had it happened? She wondered. She cast her mind back to the events of the past couple of weeks, trying to identify the moment. Maybe it had been right at the beginning, as soon as she'd set eyes on him in the department store. He'd certainly made her pulse race, and her senses tingle. She'd been so aware of him from that very first moment. Could it have been love at first sight? No. That sort of stuff only happened in romantic novels. Maybe it had been physical attraction at first sight, and somehow that had turned to love. She didn't know, but she couldn't deny her feelings. She might not want to be in love with him, but she was. Fact. The question was, what was she going to do about it? It was obvious that he didn't love her. Not that she expected him to, or wanted him to. Love was a complication that she didn't need. She'd seen what it had done to her friends, and she had no intention of letting it ruin her life. No, the best thing was to have as little to do with him as possible. In a couple of weeks' time, she would be in Spain, and would probably never see him again. Then this stupid love that she felt would go away, and she could get on with her life. It was the only sensible thing to do. To her irritation, she kept glancing at the door, hoping to see his tall, athletic figure coming through it, and she grabbed the phone every time it rang, hoping to hear his voice on the other end of the line. She tried to stop doing these things, but she couldn't control herself. Just when she thought she'd got her emotions under control, she'd catch herself once more, waiting and watching for a sign of his return. She'd got it bad. But she could beat this thing. It was just a matter of mind over heart. She'd got to keep busy and not give herself time to think. In fact, she kept so busy that she not only typed up all the notes that Jake had left for her, but reorganized the entire filing system as well. After work, she went late-night shopping, delaying her return to her flat to put off the moment when she'd have to stop, sit down, and think. But when she finally arrived home at 8 o'clock, exhausted, she spotted a silver BMW parked outside her block, and knew instantly that it was his. He sure liked to ring the changes with his cars, she thought, her heart flipping as the driver's door opened, and Jake got out, and walked over to wait while she parked her battered old Fiesta. "Where have you been?" he demanded, reaching down to drag open the driver's door. "I've been waiting for you for over half an hour." "Really?" She stood on the pavement, smoothing down her skirt and glaring at him. "Well, I do apologise. But perhaps you could let me know next time you decide to drop by. There's this modern device called a mobile phone, you know." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "I know. I tried to call you, but you didn't have a signal. I've left you 2 messages." She opened the boot and reached for her shopping bags, but he got there before her. "I guess you were too busy shopping to check your phone." "Yes, I was." She closed the boot, pressed the remote to lock the car, and turned towards him. "Why did you want to see me? Didn't everything go well at the meeting today?" "The meeting went fine, but I didn't get a chance to go back to the office today, so I couldn't arrange anything with you for tonight. I thought maybe you'd want to go out to eat." Her heart sang. But the more she saw of him, the more she was going to get hurt. I'm sorry, but I'm busy tonight. I'm still trying to catch up with household chores after the few days I've been away. She guessed that a big shot like him would have a housekeeper and wouldn't realise what it was like for lesser mortals like herself. Of course. Well, I'll settle for coffee and a takeaway pizza, he said, following her inside. The sensible thing would be to tell him she was too busy even for that, and to send him home. But right now, standing close behind him outside her flat, while she groped in her bag for her key, it wasn't easy to be sensible. And once he'd taken the key from her, his hand briefly resting on hers, sending the now familiar exhilarating tingles all over her body, it was downright impossible. She led the way up the stairs and into her home. Seems I'm not the only one who's been trying to get a hold of you, he remarked, looking over at the flashing light on her answer phone as he carried her bags into the kitchen. It's probably only Emma. I'll get it later, she told him. However, they'd just put the shopping away, Jake insisted on helping, when the phone rang again. I'll make the coffee while you get that, he offered. Thanks. She smiled gratefully. Her body really needed a caffeine boost. The effort of trying to control her emotions was taking its toll. She picked up the phone. Hello, Kendall Mackenzie speaking. Kendall, I've been trying to get you all evening. She was instantly alert as she heard the anxiety in her father's voice. Dad, what's happened? She sensed rather than saw Jake come out of the kitchen. The solicitor phoned me today. I'm afraid you're going to have to put your plans to move over here on hold. There are problems with Maria's finca. What sort of problems? Jake placed a mug of coffee on the table beside her, and she smiled her thanks as she listened to her father explain that the papers weren't in order. It seemed that Maria's husband, Salvador, had bought the land and built the house but hadn't registered it. Furthermore, her father told her, in Spanish law, when someone dies, the property automatically passes to their children, not their spouse, unless they leave a will saying otherwise. And Maria couldn't find Salvador's will. It's going to take a while to sort out, Kendall, said her father, so don't make any more plans to come over yet. He paused. Anyway, maybe it's for the best. What do you mean? She asked, puzzled. Well, are you sure you're making the right decision moving to Spain? I know we suggested it, but that was before we knew about your boyfriend. Boyfriend? Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Jake listening. That man you were with when we met you in the market. I told you, he's my boss. This was so embarrassing. Why had she let Jake talk her into inviting him in for coffee? She knew he was hanging on to every word she was saying. What must he be thinking? Your mother seems to think that there's something between you. Her father coughed awkwardly. I must say, you did seem rather close. Kendall cringed. She could feel Jake's inquisitive eyes boring into the back of her head and hoped he couldn't hear the other side of the conversation. Her father had a tendency to speak rather loud, based on the theory that, as Spain was so far away, he needed to shout to be heard. Look, Dad, thanks for letting me know. I suppose I'll just have to wait to see whether Maria's paperwork turns up. Otherwise, I'll have to look for another villa. Maybe you're right. I'll just put my plans to move on hold for now. I think that would be the wisest thing to do. We're just about to go out, dear, so I'll have to go, but I'll keep you up to date with any news. Okay. Bye, Dad. She put down the phone and turned to face Jake, knowing that he'd heard enough to make him curious. Trouble? He raised an eyebrow inquiringly. "There's a bit of a problem with the property I'm buying in Spain," she told him, briefly relating what her father had said. "And that bit about me?" She felt her cheeks flush. "Mum and Dad got the wrong impression when they saw us together," she said, hoping she sounded casual. "They seem to think there's something between us." "I see. And you disagree?" he asked softly. She bit her lip. Well, she stopped in mid-sentence, her eyes widening as he got up and walked towards her, a serious look in his eye. "Because if you do, I'll just have to show you how wrong you are," he said, pulling her into his arms. Thus ends this particular chapter. The subscription and all that sort of stuff is something that is certainly available. I wouldn't recommend it. I really don't update often enough to warrant that sort of thing, but you know, it's there if you're interested.
Hey,